Let's pause here for a few moments, continuing with a mental chant to the Guru, offering ourselves up at the lotus feet of the Guru. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So today it's an easy chapter, but it's a very delightful chapter and something that uh, opens our eyes, opens our minds to a possibility that each one of us is capable of um, to live, as Jesus Christ said, that man does not live on bread alone. So here is one woman who is unknown. She has no wish to even project what she is up to, what she is doing, what she has been blessed with, living a very ordinary life in a small village, but such an important lesson for each one of us. And of course master knew about her, and he wanted, and it was a divine sanction, that her life be known for generations to come, for us to understand what each one of us has a potential for and is capable of, and not just be so body bound. So let us first hear this reading, and then we will
Chapter 46. The Woman Yogi Who Never Eats. Sir, whither are we bound this morning? Mr. Wright was driving the Ford. He took his eyes off the road long enough to gaze at me with a questioning twinkle. From day to day he seldom knew what part of Bengal he would be discovering next. God willing, I replied devoutly, we are on our way to see an eighth wonder of the world, a woman saint whose diet is thin air. Repetition of wonders after Teresa Neumann. But Mr. Wright laughed eagerly just the same. He even accelerated the speed of the car. More extraordinary grist for his travel diary. Not one of an average tourist, that. The Ranchi school had just been left behind us. We had risen before the sun. Besides my secretary and myself, 3 Bengali friends were in the party. We drank in the exhilarating air, the natural wine of the morning. Our driver guided the car warily among the early peasants and the two-wheeled carts, slowly drawn by yoked, hump-shouldered bullocks, inclined to dispute the road with a honking interloper. "Sir, we would like to know more of the fasting saint." "Her name is Giribala," I informed my companions. "I first heard about her years ago from a scholarly gentleman, Sthitilal Nundi. He often came to the Gurgaon road home to tutor my brother Bishnu." "I know Giribala well," Sthiti Babu told me. "She employs a certain yoga technique which enables her to live without eating. I was her close neighbor in Nawabganj, near Ichapur. I made it a point to watch her closely. Never did I find evidence that she was taking either food or drink. My interest finally mounted so high that I approached the Maharaja of Burdwan and asked him to conduct an investigation. Astounded at the story, he invited her to his palace. She agreed to a test and lived for 2 months, locked up in a small section of his home. Later she returned for a palace visit of 20 days, and then for a third test of 15 days. The Maharaja himself told me that these 3 rigorous scrutinies had convinced him beyond doubt of her non-eating state. This story of Sthiti Babu's has remained in my mind for over 25 years, I concluded. Sometimes in America I wondered if the river of time would not swallow the Yogini before I could meet her. She must be quite aged now. I do not even know where or if she lives, but in a few hours we shall reach Purulia. Her brother has a home there. By 10:30 our little group was conversing with the brother, Lambadarde, a lawyer of Purulia. "Yes, my sister is living. She sometimes stays with me here, but at present she is at our family home in Bure." Lambadar Babu glanced doubtfully at the ford. "I hardly think, Swamiji, that any automobile has ever penetrated into the interior as far as Bure. It might be best if you all resign yourselves to the ancient jolt of the bullock cart." As one voice, our party pledged loyalty to the pride of Detroit. "The Ford comes from America," I told the lawyer. "It would be a shame to deprive it of an opportunity to get acquainted with the heart of Bengal." "May Ganesh go with you," Lambadar Babu said, laughing. He added courteously, "If you ever get there. I am sure Giribala will be glad to see you. She is approaching her 70s, but continues in excellent health." "Please tell me, sir, is it absolutely true that she eats nothing?" I looked directly into his eyes, those telltale windows of the mind. "It is true." His gaze was open and honorable. "In more than 5 decades I have never seen her eat a morsel. If the world suddenly came to an end, I could not be more astonished than by the sight of my sisters taking food." We chuckled together over the improbability of these 2 cosmic events. "Giribala has never sought an inaccessible solitude for her yoga practices," Lambadar Babu went on. "She has lived her entire life surrounded by her family and friends. They are all well accustomed now to her strange state. Not one of them who would not be stupefied if Giribala suddenly decided to eat anything. Sister is naturally retiring, as befits a Hindu widow, but our little circle in Purulia and in Bure all know that she is literally an exceptional woman." The brother's sincerity was manifest. Our little party thanked him warmly and set out toward Bure. We stopped at a street shop for curry and luchis, attracting a swarm of urchins who gathered round to watch Mr. Wright eating with his fingers in the simple Hindu manner. Hearty appetites caused us to fortify ourselves against an afternoon which, unknown at the moment, was to prove fairly laborious. Our way now led east through the sun-baked rice fields into the Burdwan section of Bengal. On through roads lined with dense vegetation, the songs of the mynas and the striped-throated bulbuls streamed out from trees with huge umbrella-like branches. A bullock cart now and then, the rini-rini manju-manjo squeak of its axle, and the iron-shod wooden wheels contrasting sharply in mind with the swish-swish of auto tires over the aristocratic asphalt of the cities. "Dick, halt!" My sudden request brought a jolting protest from the Ford, that overburdened mango tears fairly shouting an invitation. The five of us dashed like children to the mango-strewn earth. The tree had benevolently shed its fruits as they had ripened. "Full many a mango is born to lie unseen," I paraphrased, "and waste its sweetness on the stony ground." "Nothing like this in America, Swamiji, hey?" laughed Shailesh Majumdar, one of my Bengali students. "No," I admitted, covered with mango juice and contentment. "How I have missed this fruit in the West. A Hindu's heaven without mangoes is inconceivable." I picked up a rock and downed a proud beauty hidden on the highest limb. "Dick," I asked between bites of ambrosia, warm with the tropical sun, "are all the cameras in the car?" "Yes, sir, in the baggage compartment." "If Giribala proves to be a true saint, I want to write about her in the West. A Hindu yogini with such inspiring powers should not live and die unknown like most of these mangoes." Half an hour later, I was still strolling in the sylvan peace. "Sir," Mr. Wright remarked, "we should reach Giribala before the sun sets to have enough light for photographs." He added with a grin, "The Westerners are a skeptical lot. We can't expect them to believe in the lady without any pictures." This bit of wisdom was indisputable. I turned my back on temptation and re-entered the car. "You are right, Dick," I sighed as we sped along. I sacrificed the mango paradise on the altar of Western realism. Photographs we must have. The road became more and more sickly, wrinkles of ruts, boils of hardened clay, the sad infirmities of old age. Our group dismounted occasionally to allow Mr. Wright more easily to maneuver the Ford, which the four of us pushed from behind. "Lambadar Babu spoke truly," Shailesh acknowledged. "The car is not carrying us, we are carrying the car." Our climb-in, climb-out auto tedium was beguiled ever and anon by the appearance of a village, each one a scene of quaint simplicity. Our way twisted and turned through groves of palms among ancient, unspoiled villages, nestling in the forest shade. Mr. Wright has recorded in his travel diary under the date of May 5th, 1936. Very fascinating are these clustered of thatched mud huts, decorated with one of the names of God on the door. Many small, naked children innocently playing about, pausing to stare or run wildly from this big, black, bullockless carriage, tearing madly through their village. The women merely peep from the shadows, while the men lazily loll beneath the trees along the roadside, curious beneath their nonchalance. In one place all the villagers were gaily bathing in the large tank, in their garments, changing by draping dry cloths around their bodies, dropping the wet ones. Women bearing water to their homes in huge brass jars. The road led us a merry chase over mount and ridge. We bounced and tossed, dipped into small streams, detoured around an unfinished causeway, slithered across dry sandy riverbeds, and finally, About 5 p.m. we were close to our destination, Biur. This minute village in the interior of Bankura district, hidden in the protection of dense foliage, is unapproachable by travelers during the rainy season, when the streams are raging torrents and the roads serpent-like spit the mud venom. Asking for a guide among the group of worshippers on their way home from a temple prayer out in the lonely field, we were besieged by a dozen scantily clad lads who clambered on the sides of the car, eager to conduct us to Giribala. The road led toward a grove of date palms sheltering a group of mud huts, but before we had reached it, the ford was momentarily tipped at a dangerous angle, tossed up and dropped down. The narrow trail led around trees and tank, over ridges, into holes and deep ruts. The car became anchored on a clump of bushes, then grounded on a hillock, requiring a lift of earth clods. On we proceeded, slowly and carefully. Suddenly, the way was stopped by a mass of brush in the middle of the cart track, necessitating a detour down a precipitous ledge into a dry tank, rescue from which demanded some scraping, adzing, and shoveling. Again and again the road seemed impassable, but the pilgrimage must go on. Obliging lads fetched spades and demolished the obstacles, shades of Ganesha, while hundreds of children and parents stared. Soon we were threading our way along the two ruts of antiquity, women gazing wide-eyed from their hut doors, men trailing alongside and behind us, children scampering to swell the procession. Ours was perhaps the first auto to traverse these roads. The bullock cart union must be omnipotent here. What a sensation we created, a group piloted by an American and pioneering in a snorting car right into their hamlet fastness, invading the ancient privacy and sanctity. Halting by a narrow lane, we found ourselves within 100 feet of Giribala's ancestral home. We felt the thrill of fulfillment after the long road struggle crowned by a rough finish. We approached a large two-storied building of brick and plaster, dominating the surrounding adobe huts. The house was under the process of repair, for around it was the characteristically tropical framework of bamboos. With feverish anticipation and suppressed rejoicing, we stood before the open doors of the one blessed by the Lord's hungerless touch. Constantly agape were the villagers, young and old, bare and dressed, women aloof somewhat, but inquisitive too, men and boys unabashedly at our heels as they gazed on this unprecedented spectacle. Soon a short figure came into view in the doorway, Giribala. She was swathed in a cloth of dull goldish silk in typical Indian fashion. She drew forward modestly and hesitatingly, peering slightly from beneath the upper fold of her Swadeshi cloth. Her eyes glistened like smoldering embers in the shadows of her headpiece. We were enamored by a most benevolent and kindly face, a face of realization and understanding, free from the taint of earthly attachment. Meekly she approached and silently assented to our snapping a number of pictures with our still and movie cameras. Patiently and shyly she endured our photo techniques of posture adjustment and light arrangement. Finally, we had recorded for posterity many photographs of the only woman in the world who is known to have lived without food or drink for over 50 years. Therese Neumann, of course, has fasted since 1923. Most motherly was Giribala's expression as she stood before us, completely covered in the loose flowing cloth, nothing of her body visible but her face, with its downcast eyes, her hands, and her tiny feet. a face of rare peace and innocent poise, a wide, childlike quivering lip, a feminine nose, narrow sparkling eyes, and a wistful smile. End of Mr. Wright's diary. Mr. Wright's impression of Giribala was shared by myself. Spirituality enfolded her, like her gently shining veil. She pranammed before me in the customary gesture of greeting from a householder to a monk. Her simple charm and quiet smile gave us a welcome beyond that of honeyed oratory. Forgotten was our difficult, dusty trip. The little saint seated herself cross-legged on the veranda. Though bearing the scars of age, she was not emaciated. Her olive-colored skin had remained clear and healthy in tone. "Mother," I said in Bengali, "for over 25 years I have thought eagerly of this very pilgrimage. I heard about your sacred life from Sthiti Lal Nundi Babu." She nodded in acknowledgment. "Yes, my good neighbor in Nawabganj. During those years I have crossed the oceans, but I never forgot my early plan someday to see you. The sublime drama that you are here playing so inconspicuously should be blazoned before a world that has long forgotten the inner food divine." The saint lifted her eyes for a minute, smiling with serene interest. "Baba, honored father, knows best," she answered meekly. I was happy that she had taken no offense. One never knows how great yogis or yoginis will react to the thought of publicity. They shun it as a rule, wishing to pursue in silence the profound soul research. An inner sanction comes to them when the proper time arrives to display their lives openly for the benefit of seeking minds. "Mother," I went on, "please forgive me then for burdening you with many questions. Kindly answer only those that please you. I shall understand your silence also." She spread her hands in a gracious gesture. "I am glad to reply, insofar as an insignificant person like myself can give satisfactory answers." "Oh, no, not insignificant," I protested sincerely. "You are a great soul." "I am a humble servant of all," she added quaintly. "I love to cook and feed people." A strange pastime, I thought, for a non-eating saint. "Tell me, mother, from your own lips, do you live without food?" "That is true." She was silent for a few moments. Her next remark showed that she had been struggling with mental arithmetic. "From the age of 12 years 4 months down to my present age of 68, a period of over 56 years, I have not eaten food or taken liquids." "Are you never tempted to eat?" "If I felt a craving for food, I would have to eat." Simply yet regally, she stated this axiomatic truth, one known too well by a world revolving around 3 meals a day. "But you do eat something." My tone held a note of remonstrance. "Of course." She smiled in swift understanding. "Your nourishment derives from the finer energies of the air and sunlight, and from the cosmic power which recharges your body through the medulla oblongata." "Baba knows." Again she acquiesced, her manner soothing and unemphatic. "Mother, please tell me about your early life. It holds a deep interest for all of India, and even for our brothers and sisters beyond the seas." Giribala put aside her habitual reserve, relaxing into a conversational mood. "So be it." Her voice was low and firm. "I was born in these forest regions. My childhood was unremarkable, save that I was possessed by an insatiable appetite. I had been betrothed in early years. 'Child,' my mother often warned me, 'try to control your greed. When the time comes for you to live among strangers in your husband's family, What will they think of you if your days are spent in nothing but eating? The calamity she had foreseen came to pass. I was only 12 when I joined my husband's people in Nawabganj. My mother-in-law shamed me morning, noon, and night about my gluttonous habits. Her scoldings were a blessing in disguise, however. They aroused my dormant spiritual tendencies. One morning her ridicule was merciless. "I shall soon prove to you," I said, stung to the quick, "that I shall never touch food again as long as I live." My mother-in-law laughed in derision. "So," she said, "how can you live without eating when you cannot live without overeating?" This remark was unanswerable. Yet an iron resolution scaffolded my spirit. In a secluded spot I sought my Heavenly Father. "Lord," I prayed incessantly, "please send me a guru, one who can teach me to live by thy light and not by food." A divine ecstasy fell over me. Led by a beatific spell, I set out for the Nawabganj Ghat on the Ganges. On the way, I encountered the priest of my husband's family. "Venerable sir," I said trustingly, "kindly tell me how to live without eating." He stared at me without reply. Finally he spoke in a consoling manner. "Child," he said, "come to the temple this evening. I will conduct a special Vedic ceremony for you." This vague answer was not the one I was seeking. I continued toward the Ghat. The morning sun pierced the waters. I purified myself in the Ganges, as though for a sacred initiation. As I left the river bank, my wet cloth around me, in the broad glare of day, my master materialized himself before me. "Dear little one," he said, in a voice of loving compassion, "I am the Guru, sent here by God to fulfill your urgent prayer." He was deeply touched by its very unusual nature. "From today you shall live by the astral light, your bodily atoms fed from the infinite current." Giribala fell into silence. I took Mr. Wright's pencil and pad and translated into English a few items for his information. The saint resumed the tale, her gentle voice barely audible. The Ghat was deserted, but my Guru cast around us an aura of guarding light, that no stray bathers later disturb us. He initiated me into a Kriya technique, which frees the body from dependence on the gross food of mortals. The technique includes the use of a certain mantra and a breathing exercise more difficult than the average person could perform. No medicine or magic is involved, nothing beyond the Kriya. In the manner of the American newspaper reporter who had unknowingly taught me his procedure, I questioned Giribala on many matters which I thought would be of interest to the world. She gave me, bit by bit, the following information. I have never had any children. Many years ago I became a widow. I sleep very little, as sleep and waking are the same to me. I meditate at night, attending to my domestic duties in the daytime. I slightly feel the change in climate from season to season. I have never been sick or experienced any disease. I feel only slight pain when accidentally injured. I have no bodily excretions. I can control my heart and breathing. I often see my Guru, as well as other great souls, in vision. Mother, I asked, why don't you teach others the method of living without food? My ambitious hopes for the world's starving millions were nipped in the bud. No, she shook her head. I was strictly commanded by my Guru not to divulge the secret. It is not his wish to tamper with God's drama of creation. The farmers would not thank me if I taught many people to live without eating. the luscious fruits would lie uselessly on the ground. It appears that misery, starvation, and disease are whips of our karma which ultimately drive us to seek the true meaning of life. Mother, I said slowly, what is the use of your having been singled out to live without eating? To prove that man is spirit, her face lit with wisdom, to demonstrate that by divine advancement he can gradually learn to live by the eternal light and not by food. The saint sank into a deep meditative state. Her gaze was directed inward. The gentle depths of her eyes became expressionless. She gave a certain sigh, the prelude to the ecstatic, breathless trance. For a time she had fled to the questionless realm, the heaven of inner joy. The tropical darkness had fallen. The light of a small kerosene lamp flickered fitfully over the faces of a score of villagers squatted silently in the shadows. The darting glowworms and distant oil lanterns of the huts wove bright, eerie patterns into the velvet night. It was the painful hour of parting. A slow, tedious journey lay before our little party. Giribala, I said as the saint opened her eyes, please give me a keepsake, a strip of one of your saris. She soon returned with a piece of Benares silk, extending it in her hand as she suddenly prostrated herself on the ground. Mother, I said reverently, rather let me touch your own blessed feet. Chapter 46. The Woman Yogi Who Never Eats. Sir, whither are we bound this morning?
It is such a sweet story. Not too much of discussion in this. I mean, it's something to absorb for us to um, understand that, that is also a way to live. Many of the saints that we have heard about, who the seers, who siddhas, who have been in meditation for a long time, many years, they didn't. I mean, how does the body sustain? It's the cosmic, the prana that sustains their life. And here, I mean, the very ordinary person in a very small village. Nobody knows about it, except that master's brother was studying from this person who mentions it, Siti Babu. And from that time itself, master is so enamored, and he has been wanting to meet this saint. And he's, as he says, that I always wondered, even when he was in America, he says, I always wondered if the river of time would not swallow the yogini. Such a beautiful use of words. Before I could meet her, and Siti Babu, when he came to know that she doesn't eat, he had also, it was not very sure, so he had kept an eye on her and even told the Maharaja there, and the Maharaja also, brought her to, and she was okay with it. I mean, she didn't mind it. For days together, he kept her in the palace in a small room, locked up, just to keep an eye whether she was, on the sly eating or not. She was okay with it. There was no ego. There was like, how can they treat me like this? They said, okay, you come and stay here. She went and stayed for a few days, and then again she went back. And every time, finally, they realized, no, she's not really eating. But it didn't make any difference whether they believed her or they didn't believe her. For her, it wasn't such an important issue that people should believe that I am not eating. That wasn't her point. And that is where she, even when she's telling in the part when master is questioning her, you can make out it's not, she's not making a big deal out of it. um, for many of us, like, even if, I mean, when we did a 9-day fast, and that is not really fasting. I mean, there's a lot of things that master allows us to eat. It's just that you don't have the regular food, and there's no spice, and there's no salt, no sugar, no oil. And even those 9 days, all of us made such a big deal out of it. So, when you hear this story, you realize that My goodness, the kind of enlightenment she must be in, or the kind of stature, that spiritual stature rather, that we see. So when master meets the brother, he says, he asks, he's wanting to know whether what they have heard, and they want to go and meet her. Is it really worth all that effort that they're going to? So he knows, he is known from Sthiti Babu, but still he wants to find from the brother. And he says, I looked directly into his eyes, those telltale windows of the mind. Now here, Master has often spoken about the eyes, and we also know that the eyes are supposed to be the the window to the soul, right? And Master, since this path is all about, this is a Dwapara Yoga, and this is all about energy, and magnetism is something that is part of this. We often hear as we are in this path, and Master often said that till we are uh, in the level of where the masters are, where they're so protected, this their magnetism is so high that nothing affects that them. But still we are fledgling yogis trying to work our way up. And that he said that when if it is your family member or somebody you are very close to, or you want to coach somebody, it's okay. But otherwise he would say that don't look into anybody's eyes, because eyes are very powerful. There's a lot of magnetism in the eyes, and the moment we look into somebody's eyes, there's a lot of exchange of magnetism that happens. So if the other person has negative vibration, or thoughts that are not very conducive for our own spiritual growth, he said it can affect us. So in order to protect your own magnetism, he said don't look into anybody's eyes. But of course, for the master, he doesn't have to he's much beyond that, say. So he says, I look directly into his eyes. And then the brother says that it is true. And he's saying that if the world suddenly came to an end, I could not be more astonished than by the sight of my sisters taking food. And master says, we chuckled over the improbability of these two cosmic events. So even you know if it is such a permanent thing for her, that if she were to eat, that will be a cosmic event. So that's a very interesting word he uses for the whole the creation to stop existing, and her partaking food. Okay, so here he says that again, he says Giribala has never sought an inaccessible solitude for her yoga practices. She has lived her entire life surrounded by her family and friends. Again, this is something many of us, when we say, oh, I want to meditate, but there are so many people around me, there is no quiet place for me to sit and meditate. There's so much of noise outside. This is again a very important part, that and we all know that when in those days when there's a joint family, everybody used to live in a joint family, there are a lot of kids, a lot of family members, the houses are not that, they're not that big. Um so she didn't seek, oh, I need to meditate, I need a place that is all. She was living amongst everyone, she was surrounded by people, but yet when she was in her meditative state, or she had to do her yogic practices, which later on she says that she was initiated, it didn't make any difference for her. She would go, and people get used to, that's what it's, they are well accustomed now to her strange state. For her strange state was she would go into samadhi. But even for that, the practices, the yogic practices that she did, mm, she was fine with being surrounded. And this is a very important learning for all of us, that don't have to just accept the circumstances, the environment that we are, and yet continue to make our effort, our I have to do my sadhana, I have to sit down for my meditation. Not give excuses saying, oh, there are people around me, there's no proper, and there's so much noise, there's so like this, if only it was like that, I would have meditated better. These are all excuses. If we want to find God, if we really love God, we will make that effort. We have to make that effort. And we are all here on this path because we realize, we know what this path is all about, what we need to do. And we do love God, all of us. So no excuses. I think that is one takeaway for each one of us, that no excuses from now onwards. If I want to meditate, I will meditate, and slowly people around us start accepting our strange ways, and they will give us space. They will give us that could be our me time, and nobody can disturb me in that time. So okay, again he's saying, not one of them who would not be stupefied if Giribala suddenly decided to eat anything. Okay, and again he says, sister is naturally retiring, but our little circle in Purulia and in Bure all know that she's literally an exceptional woman. It's a little circle. They have not been, talking about her or my sister, my our, relative who is like. Not many people knew about her. Probably even in their village where they were living, there was no, broadcasting happening there. Not many people would have known about the existence of such an exceptional woman amongst them. And that was the simplicity, and that is what makes it all the more exceptional about what we are reading about her now. And if master had not known about her, none of us would have ever found out. And I'm sure there are lot of such stories, lot of such saints who have lived and probably still living, and never came out because they didn't have the get the divine sanction to have to tell. So you know it's such a beautiful thought to have, that how many such saints would have lived in this land. And that is why master said, no, that India is protected despite all that, in history, that all that has happened, where there were invaders and people who have really uh, done a lot of bad for the country. But if it has survived, if Sanatan Dharma has survived, it's because, not because of, yes, of course, the warriors, the soldiers, all, the freedom fighters, all of them they have had their share of what they are doing for the country. But more importantly, for these spiritual warriors, this land has been, they have walked on these lands, and that is what has given the blessing to this land to sustain and still continue to grow, and to still be, and as master said, that in future India will be the spiritual guru for the world. If that has sustained, it's because of the existence of these spiritual warriors, silent spiritual warriors, that India has produced. So okay, and then the couple of pages are so beautiful. They travel as they go through, and a bullock cart, and master has such a beautiful way of writing. The bullock cart, now and then the rini rini manju manju squeak of its axle, and swish swish of the auto tires. Beautifully he has explained this. And the childlike way that they go and start eating the mangoes. This is mango season, so we can understand, and the these days we go looking for organic mangoes. Those days it was like lying on the ground for them to just go and pick it up and eat. And again, this is what master is showing us, like, when we think spirituality, we think it is all grim. You need to be all grim and grave. None of that. He's like Paramhansa. He was, by this time he was already got the title of Paramhansa by Sri Yukteswar. He's a self-realized master. Yet there is divinity, that he's at all time. He's like one with the divine, one with the infinite. Yet he's displaying to us that you don't have to be so grim. You can just enjoy, be childlike. So he just goes running, and all the eating mangoes, and he's saying, even when Mr. Wright says, come on, we will get late, otherwise we will not be able to take pictures. And he says, this bit of wisdom was indisputable. I turned my back on temptation and re-entered the car. So childlike and so human. I mean, that is what he is showing us, that how we should live our life. just be childlike, and you know and yet be, one with the divine. So here again, where Mr. Wright is, in his writing in his travel diary, very fascinating are these clusters of thatched mud huts decorated with one of the names of God on the door. It was this place. That's what, everything. I mean, even a small mud house, poor illiterate people, but the house's doors are decorated with the name of God. Spirituality is part of, everyday life. That was of these villagers, the simple folks. It was every part of everyday life. Temples, going to the prayers, the houses, the decoration of the houses, simple decoration, but yet it was the God and the divinity was part of that life. And Master goes on to explain this beautifully. And here in this page, this, I mean, we can just read through it. He's spoken about the village life, and he says, but the pilgrimage must go on. I mean, where he's talking about all the shoveling, because they had to go through a lot of trouble to reach this place. This is the visit to any saint is a pilgrimage, and that is how we should approach. So even when we go to our center, our masters are there. It is a pilgrimage every day. If we are going there every day, we're going to on Sunday, it is a blessing that we are even being allowed to be there. And I mean, if we go with that kind of shraddha, that kind of devotion, that this is my pilgrimage today. Now, that's a beautiful. And even every day, approaching every day is a pilgrimage, because today, as the other day we were seeing something where I think Jyotish ji said, as you get up in the morning, uh, yeah, that last Sunday when we had this satsang, in conversation with Jyotish ji and Devi ji, that the Ananda Gurgaon had done. And he said that, as you get up in the morning, approach the day as if it's your friend, and see, okay, what are we going to, what adventures and what are we going to explore today? How do we offer ourselves to our guru, to God and gurus, and offer ourselves as an instrument for whatever needs to happen. So if even every day, if we approach each day as a pilgrimage to more understanding of this path, to how to attune ourselves to guru, I mean, the whole life can be a pilgrimage for us if we approach it that way. So anyways, so they finally reach where everybody, the whole village is, inquisitive. One, these guys have come in a car which they have never seen before. And and what kind of struggle these people did, and for finding out where initially when they went, till they met the brother, they didn't even know if she existed, if she was still living or not. But still they went on this journey, right? I mean, in those days there was no phone call that they could make and find out, is she even alive, or going on Google to find out. Nothing. It was just blind faith. Master had and some basic knowledge, and they went in search of her. And finally, when they reach, again he writes so beautifully. Uh, Audio is on. He says, with feverish anticipation, with feverish anticipation and suppressed rejoicing, we stood before the open doors of the one blessed by the Lord's hungerless touch. This again, when we say that, we need, when we sit down to meditate, or when we are on the spiritual path, and we expect that I should get visions, I should have this experience, I should see light, I should hear the sound of Om. The whole point is, we will be blessed if God and the Guru, think that we need it on the spiritual path. So she was blessed. It wasn't like, oh, she decided one day I will not eat, so she stopped eating. I mean, even her decision, and then her being allowed to do it. She was blessed by Lord. So everything that we have or don't get on our in our meditation. So even approaching our meditation, even approaching how whatever is the spiritual journey with as whatever I'm getting is a blessing from my guru or God and guru is like you can use the words alternatively, it's just the same. So here he says that she was the one blessed by the Lord's hungerless touch. So she received that as a blessing. And he says her eyes glisten. Again, he's noticing her eyes. Somebody who's, so advanced as saint. He says her eyes glistened like smoldering embers in the shadows of her headpiece. Bright, brilliant eyes. Um, and he says that benevolent and kindly face, a face of realization and understanding, free from the taint of earthly attachment. And he says, no, again, this is a 50 years. Teresa Newman was very recently, 1923, and they had gone, this is 1936. So not as many years had passed since Teresa Newman also had, stopped eating. She's like, when she also mentions 56 years and counting, when that she hasn't touched food, she hasn't eaten anything. And again he says, a face of rare peace, innocent poise, a wild, wide, childlike, quivering lips, feminine nose. Even for Ananda Mahima, Master said that very childlike face. Most saints, if you see, they have this very childlike demeanor. Uh, it's they approach. They are like children of God, right? They are one with God. And Master also had this very childlike. Even though when he spoke wisdom, there was so much of wisdom, so much of knowledge, yet very childlike. And that is what he says about her also. I think that is what differentiates a saint from somebody who's very worldly. Worldly think so much of themselves and so much of burden that they seem to be carrying of the world. Whereas these are very childlike, nothing, no cares. God takes care of everything. And he says spirituality enfolded her like her gently shining veil. Again, such a beautiful use of words. Mm, he again asks her also. No, again he's checking with her. Mother, for over 25 years I had thought, okay. Mm, he asks, will you tell me about your, I hear that you've not been eating. Uh, where he says, the sublime drama that you are here playing so inconspicuously should be blazoned before a world that has long forgotten the inner food divine. And she says, Baba knows. You know what I'm going through or what is happening here. So you know about it. So then he was making sure, because not many of them want the world to know. They're not about like, it is like they don't have that inner sanction to go out and tell everyone what they're. So he says they shun it as a rule, wishing to pursue in silence a profound soul research. An inner sanction comes to them when the proper time arrives to display their lives openly for the benefit of seeking mind. So he was just checking with her whether she has that inner sanction. And if Master right from start, he was on a mission. He had this dispensation that he was the one chosen to spread the teachings, these ancient teachings of Kriya Yoga to the West. So it was a very outwardly thing. And he said that in a previous life he had lived in the Himalayas, and when he'll come back, he'll go back, he'll be in the Himalayas. So that particular thing, it was a dispensation from God. So he had to live that kind of life where it's written about him and all that. And most of them don't need to write about it. And again, she has no ego, right? When she says, I'm glad to reply in so far as an insignificant person. Insignificant, I mean, what is there? Even Ananda Mahima said that what is there to say, about such statures, such self-realized person. And she said, what is there to talk about? And she's also saying, insignificant person like myself, if you think that she can give a satisfactory answer. And he says, no, you are a great soul. She says, no, I'm a humble servant. I love to cook and feed people. Even Master used to, Swamiji writes that he used to love to cook for his congregation, the monks, and he would often cook for them. So, and he says, a strange pastime for a non-eating saint. And very simple question when Master says, are you never tempted to eat? And she says, if I felt a craving for food, I would have to eat. Very simple. So it wasn't like, her ego saying, no, I have taken this pledge. I should not eat. I will not eat. She says, if I felt a craving, I would eat. I mean, it's not such a big deal, but then there is no craving. She's surpassed that. So, simply yet regally, she stated this axiomatic truth. It was an axiom, it was a principle for her. One known too well by a world revolving around 3 meals a day. Come what may, us who are body bound, 3 meals to khana hi hai. Even one meal, when somebody misses, they feel, oh God, something is not there. Master asks her, your nourishment derives from the finer energy. So now see here, she's so-called illiterate, and many of us who came on this path before we came on the path, I don't think I for sure didn't know that the prana enters through the medulla, and this is how the body is sustained. So he says your nourishment derives from the finer energies of the air and sunlight, from the cosmic power which recharges your body through the medulla oblongata. She says Baba knows her. And then the most important is she knows. It wasn't just, yeah, I stopped eating and now I don't feel the need to eat. She knows that her body is being sustained by this energy that comes in through the medulla oblongata. So that's the most important point. She didn't read it anywhere. There was no Google, there was no texts that she would have read. She knew, because that is what she was experiencing, that this prana that was flowing in through the medulla is sustaining her body, and she doesn't need to eat the indirect source of food. So when later on he asks her to talk about her life, again, when she's saying, very matter of factly she's telling, and she says, my mother-in-law shamed me. But here again, it's the attitude that matters, right? Something that she went through, and she says that her scoldings were a blessing in disguise. They roused the dormant spiritual tendencies. So, as Master always said, Swamiji often said, that attitude is most important on the spiritual journey. It's how you approach anything. So she didn't blame, or like she was talking, she took that also as an opportunity, because that is what finally helped her to transcend the problem that she was going through, I mean, of overeating, and just transcended it. And where then she says iron resolution. And here, I mean, that you realize that it wasn't just a normal, she was just a 12-year-old child. And she knew when she made that resolution, she says, in a secluded spot, I sought my heavenly Father. And what does she pray for? She says, Lord, please send me a guru. Because that child, as a 12-year also, she knew that you need a guru who can, help you overcome this. One who can teach me to live by thy light and not by food. It wasn't just a random prayer that she said, no, help me that I should stop eating. She asked for a guru. That's when you realize it was just not just a small, ordinary 12-year-old child who just, happened to make that resolution. A divine ecstasy fell over me, led by a beatific spell. She says, I went, and again she takes bath, and when she meets that priest, and he says, oh, he doesn't understand what is this child is talking about, and he says, okay, come in the evening, I'll do some puja. And she realized the vague answer was not the one I was seeking. So she realized this is vague. What I need is a concrete, step that I need to take. So she says, I purified myself in the Ganges as though for a sacred initiation. She knew something was going to happen. When she came out, my master materialized himself before me. So, master always said, when, the prayer of the disciple is, you really seek a guru, or when the disciple is ready, the guru appears. So this is exactly what he materialized in body at that time. And he says, little one, um, I am the guru sent here by God to fulfill your urgent prayer. He was deeply touched by the unusual nature of the prayer. From today you shall live by the astral light, your bodily atoms fed by the infinite current, which is prana. And then it's such a beautiful, just visualizing this. The ghat was deserted. My guru cast round us an aura of guarding light, and he initiated, she says, into a kriya technique which frees the body from dependence on the gross food of mortals. The technique includes use of a certain mantra and a breathing exercise more difficult than the average person can perform. No medicine or magic is involved, nothing beyond the kriya. Now, we don't know the kriya that she is talking about is something that we have been initiated into, because this also has a certain mantra and is a certain breathing technique. But whatever it is, she just took it and did it with as much, because for her it was very important um, step that she was taking, and she did it in such a way that she never needed it. She never needed to eat her food. And then, further she's saying, I sleep very little, as sleep and waking are the same for me. I meditate at night, attending my domestic duties. So it is not like she's now a saint, so she's just sitting around people. She's doing her domestic. Malahiri Mahashaya, he used to meditate in the night. Daytime he was a householder. He had a job. He was taking care of his family. He had to take care of the finances of the family. He was doing all of it. The night master always used to say, night sit and meditate. That's a time. That's a time for the yogi to connect with God. Daytime, this path is all about that, to householder path. So you don't neglect anything that you are doing as a householder. And nighttime, and then the more dedicatedly somebody is practicing kriya, you don't need much to sleep much. You don't need that sleep, because meditation is what, it's an ultimate relaxation. Why do we sleep? We sleep because the body needs rest. The body needs to relax after the whole day of doing things and being busy. And meditation is much more than what a subconscious sleep can give. It's a super conscious relaxation. So you don't need to sleep much. And she says, I slightly feel the changes in the climate. I've never been sick. Kriya gives immunity. Um, I feel very slight pain when accidentally injured. This again is a very interesting thing. Master once, demonstrated it to the monks. Monks were carrying something. I think it was called wishing tree or something, and they dropped it on his toe, and it was paining. First, his face became turned red with all the pain. Then he said, "Look, I'll show you something." He said, "I will shift my consciousness to the point between my eyebrows." And he closed his eyes. He gazed up at the point between the eyebrows, and immediately it shifted. There was peace, there was bliss on his face. He said, "Now I'll shift my consciousness to where it is hurting." So he brought it down. He brought himself down, and his face turned red again with all the pain. He said, "Again I shift." So this is what, the more we learn to live in our, in our superconscious state, which master, that's why I said that, if you can live 24 hours with your consciousness, your attention at the spiritual eye, you can be liberated. That is what she's saying. She lives in that super conscious state, so she doesn't feel any pain even when accidentally injured. She doesn't feel the weather, is it cold or is it hot, doesn't affect her. And I have no bodily excretions because she doesn't eat anything, she doesn't drink anything, so that function is not needed at all for her. I can control my heart and breathing. She can control it. we can't control our heart, right? That is why we given honk so that we can't control the heart, we can't control the mind. So using the breath, we then control, try to bring the that down, right? Where the finally when we are so concentrated that you become breathless, the heart. But she says, I can control the heart and breathing. I often see my guru as well as other souls, great souls, in vision, because she was always in that super conscious state. And he says, why then, Master? He's very expansive. He says, why not teach these what you have, so that people who are starving can benefit. She says, no, because I didn't have a inner sanction. My guru didn't sanction it. And again, such wisdom. She says, it appears that misery, starvation, and disease are whips of our karma, which ultimately drive us to seek the true meaning of life. So it is, if somebody is starving, I mean, it's because of the karma, previous lifetimes probably, that they are suffering in this lifetime. They have to go through. Also, if everything was nice, as Master said, that in the astral world everything is so beautiful, everything is so nice, you are amongst a vibration that is in sync with your vibration. People around you or the other souls around you are all in sync with your vibration. There is no struggle. So there is no desire to get out of that place. So this world, this earth, is where it also gives us the opportunity. All this struggle, when we either the person is struggling or sees all that struggle around them, is when the urge, the desire to get out of it comes. So that is what she's saying. Misery, starvation, and disease are whips of our karma, which ultimately drive us to seek the true meaning of life. If that wasn't there, nobody will seek to get out of it, because everything is so hunky dory here. So no one will have the urge, the desire to be free. So this is given, and this planet, this exists, this world is where we can actually make efforts and actually get free, liberated. And he asks, what is the use of your having been singled out to live without eating? She says, to prove that man is spirit. What wisdom! To demonstrate that by divine advancement he can gradually learn to live by the eternal light and not by food. So much of wisdom in that. I mean, he came and asked, so she said. Otherwise, also, although she was fine if nobody had found out, she was just fine about by it. So, what a life this was, and Master felt that this has to be brought out into this the world for each one of us to understand that how to get out of the body consciousness. So we have all been given the technique. um, I mean, we don't know whether what the kriya she was doing is something similar or the same, but the whole point is Master has given us the technique. We have guru who can bless us, as Master always said. When somebody he said, why don't you do Devi Mukherjee, I think he was always laughing, and he said, why do you keep doing this, why don't you change? And he said, how can I change, Master? I need your blessing, how can I do it? He said, God's blessing is always there, my blessings are always there, what's lacking is your blessing. So all of us have to put in our efforts, our blessing has to be there to whatever spiritual progress that we want, we all need to be doing. And with that, thank you for joining. We meet next week with the next chapter, which is I Return to the West. So we are 3 more chapters to go before we finish this beautiful scripture that we have been going through. So thanks a lot. See you. Joy to you.